All right, welcome back to the Iron Sights podcast. Man, this is the second time I've done that in like a week. I mispronounced my own podcast. I apologize. I've got Wild Bill Braski of Wild Bill Braski Knife and Tool Company. He's also a U.S. military veteran, current law enforcement officer, and generally speaking, a really stand-up dude that I have known for probably the better part of 2 years through the interwebs, but we haven't actually had an opportunity to connect face-to-face like this. We've done it over the phone. We've done it on, online and whatnot. And I am stoked to be here. Bill, welcome to the show, my dude.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Appreciate it.
You are an interesting cat to me, and I know there's a lot there, and I want to dig into some things. Specifically, I want to talk about law enforcement, and I want to talk about combatives training in law enforcement. This is something you do heavily. We'll talk about the fitness components of that, the different aspects or foundational fundamentals and your experiences with those. I am certain that people listening to this, both inside and outside of law enforcement, or anybody involved in trying to protect themselves or just trying to be like, I don't know, it sounds corny, but being harder to kill and just kind of prepared for anything that life might throw at them, you are a dude that can provide a tremendous amount of value. And one of the things that I love about how you do that is it's very practical. It's very even keel. It is no fuss, no muss type of what you see is what you get. And we're just going to be very real about this. You're not bashing anybody over the head with it. And it, from what I've gathered, you haven't pissed off too many people in the way that you're doing it. And I don't mean that in a dramatic kind of way, just like the experts, the people that I respect and that I've learned to trust and follow also do that with you. And I think that says a lot, especially in a world that is highly controversial and in a lot of different ways, and especially coming from a guy who is current and does the work. So anyway, thank you again for making time for me, man. I'm anxious to get into this.
Yeah, man, that's excited to be here. We've been talking about it for a while. It's cool to finally have a chat.
Yeah, I agree. So we finally put this together. So we're just going to jump right in here. I've given, kind of everybody why I wanted to talk to you today and why I wanted to put this out there for the world and whoever else might be listening to it on other planets. But that said, let's just start with you, man. Just give everybody a little insight on who Wild Bill is and a little bit of your background. Let's talk about your story, dude.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of background to kind of make everything kind of make sense because I've had an interesting journey. So it all started off for me right after high school when I enlisted in the Marine Corps. And I did my time in the infantry. I spent, 10 or so years doing that. And then as an 0311 and then became 0369 my last couple of years, which was a infantry platoon sergeant. So I did my last couple of years in that. During the time as a grunt, as an 0311, I did combat deployment to Afghanistan. And in that workup and in that training, I saw a lot of things that happened during training I kind of questioned. And I've always had an inquisitive mind. And then we go on a deployment and we had a lot of guys get seriously hurt, pretty bad, and saw a lot of things that after thinking about that, hey, some of this could have been prevented through quality training, which we didn't have. So that's kind of where that started. I learned the hard way through a lot of failures. And then after that, I became an infantry platoon sergeant, did another deployment in 2019 back to Afghanistan, thought I'd never go back. And I took all the failures that I found from the first time and I implemented them as a leader in the second time. And we found a significant success. However, the mission set was very different. But I saw success in that. And I was like, all right, this is starting to make sense. If you have realistic quality training.
Can I time you out for just a second? Sorry, I hate these. We're doing this remotely and digitally, so there's a little pauses. So I apologize to the audience if that gets annoying. Sometimes the distance and the interwebs or pause things a little bit. So what I want to understand is when you say it was different, like it was a different mission set, without giving, you don't have to give me all the specifics, but what do you mean by that when you say it was different?
Yeah, so the first deployment was, it was your typical infantry type of deployment where you're going out, you're occupying a patrol base of 20 or 30 guys in the middle of nowhere. You're sleeping there and you stay there for a couple of weeks until you get resupplied. and that's it. And you're pushing missions out and doing patrols and things like that. And so that was like kind of like cowboy rules time of setting right there. The second one, the difference was the war was coming to an end, if not was already over. And when we were tasked with was pretty much training the Afghan army and using some intelligence through human and CIs and stuff like that to do strategic strikes and stuff with the drones and HIMARS rockets and stuff like that. So that was the mission set. So it wasn't as kinetic at all. It was very different. And the eerie thing about it was our base was in where Bastion Airfield was. And when we left in 2014, we had given all of that to the Afghans. So when we had established that little tiny base there, when I went back in 2019, like we purchased that spot, the US purchased this spot back from the Afghans and put our base in the middle of what used to be the gigantic base that the Afghans owned, that we created, gave to the Afghans. It went to shit, obviously. And then we own a little piece of this, and the rest of it we called Zombieland, because it was at one point like a really well-functioning, well-organized military base with an airfield. So it was very just different mission set.
So when you talk about the leadership or the sorry, not leadership, but training failures that you learned in the first deployment versus the second, talk about the application of that. I'm trying to understand, like, what do you mean? Because it sounds very different. I mean, obviously, again, without knowing all the details, again, kinetic versus non-kinetic. And that sounds a little spicy to me, that you're surrounded by, a bunch of people that, you don't necessarily know if they like you or not, and the perimeter or the area of space that you're taking up. And I would imagine who you've got to back you up in terms of resources and things like that is not the same as it was the time before, despite it even not being as quote unquote kinetic.
Yeah, I'll touch on that first thing and I'll come back to that second deployment, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So the first one, like, I'll give you an example. We got like a very down and dirty, you could call it CQB, whatever you want to call it, right? Room clearing mount, the Marine Corps calls it. Very down and dirty class that was taught by my direct leadership, right? So that's like a dude who's been in for 4 years, who's never been to a formal school, who just learned it from the dude who taught him. So we got taught by those guys, and it just seemed very rudimentary. And I'm like, I feel like there's a little bit more to this. And I had no other experience prior to that. And then when we deployed that first time, I saw we got very rudimentary like training in CQB and room clearing, whatever you want to call it. And we were using that skill a lot in looking for things on our patrols and stuff, including, we had a couple of guys step on some pressure plates. We had encountered a lot of IEDs at that time, a lot of stuff like that. And we didn't really have tactics to support the things that we were doing. Or we didn't have any training to support the things that we were doing, at least not formally. And the biggest issue I saw was that when guys were teaching us that, and remember, I'm a new guy in this time, I'm being taught by a dude who's been in for 4 years, so a couple years longer than me. And then he learned it from a dude that was no one had gone to any formal school. It's just watered down, inbred tactics with no basis to rhyme or reason why they did things. So I saw that as an issue. And then I saw it as an issue when we would encounter some resistance or we'd encounter some real life, adversaries. And I was like, man, either we just got lucky or this worked. And I came to the conclusion at the end of it that I know we just got lucky, like quite a bit.
Okay.
And so the first thing that I started to pursue when I got back, a couple years after that deployment, is when I became a cop. And in doing that, I started to pursue like, all right, where do I go to find this training to bring back to my unit? Because the unit isn't providing it. So that's when I started to reach out to the Direct Action Resource Center and linked up with Rich Mason at Darcy. And I went down there for level 1 and I was hooked. I'm like, this is this is what I need. So I devoted myself to that for a couple of years, where I'd go down 3, 4, 5 times a year for a couple of weeks, self-funded, everything. And I did that for a little while. And then I ended up getting some Marines from my platoon to go in there and then my unit to go down there, and started to build the issues that I saw in my first deployment. I started to try and fix those with actual training. And that was the big step in my like training career, I would say.
Okay.
The jujitsu, the combative stuff was happening in the background at that point, but it wasn't the forefront. That was kind of the forefront. That's what started all this.
So the jujitsu part, the combatives part, was that part of your life before you went into the Marine Corps, or is this something you picked up there?
Yeah, I've been training jujitsu, boxing, and stuff like that since I was in high school.
Okay.
Early 2000s, yeah.
Okay, so I was curious, was there an ask of you at all to be part of that type of training process in the Marine Corps or in the law enforcement that happened in the middle of all this?
Yeah, the law enforcement is where I picked up on the combative stuff quite a bit.
Okay, gotcha.
Again, it's applying that same mindset that I had on that deployment when I became a cop. I learned some mystical kung fu stuff in the academy, and then I go out on the street and I'm like, man, this isn't how this works.
Right. It's not real.
So,
it's not real
and
life
having
here.
No. But having some training at that point, I was like, man, I know that basic wrestling takedowns are like where it's at. Why aren't we doing that? So I took a lot of that stuff into the police training with the help of, my coach and some mentors. My coach, Rob Magow, who owns Manchester Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the Officer Survival Series, which is the combatives program that we run, and that I help teach him, or I teach for him some of the curriculum. He's the guy that like put everything in that together and got the program into the academy and all this sort of stuff that happened later on. But he was the mastermind behind that, and we just connected through me trying to pursue training to fix the gaps that I saw in law enforcement.
So I'm wondering how that, so obviously having a mentor is extraordinarily important. I wonder how that's received. Was he already in tight with law enforcement and already teaching this maybe at other academies or for other agencies? Or is this something that you guys were just bringing to the table?
It's funny how the world works, man. Like, he retired as a cop 20, 25 years from a department, and he had done wrestling, jiu-jitsu for his entire time as a cop. So he's like I would say like an OG kind of jiu-jitsu guy. And he was trying to get that program he was working on for 25 years at the PD. It took so long because change, is so resistant in this community. And I would say the past 3 years, it's really taken off. And a lot of departments are adopting it. And he's done very, very well with it, reaching people the right way.
So I want to get into that a little bit, a lot deeper actually, but there's two things come up for me there. One is the fundamental truth that change in law enforcement is like, I don't know. It's looking at like prehistoric times to where we are now. It is so slow, right, to come about. So the question is obviously, I want your take on why that is and where you see the roadblocks are. And then number two, what you said there about it really taking off. Like, what's the tipping point for the last 3 years? And why is it taking off so much? I'm curious about your take on this. And when I ask that question, I think I'm asking obviously very specific to your specific situation, but I'd like to think, because I connect with guys like you frequently, they're saying the same thing. It's still very hard, right? There's still a lot of resistance to a lot of things, but it does seem to me, or appear to me, that things are taking off and people are starting to take notice. And I think it's largely due to people like you that are doing the things you're doing and the way that you're doing it. So I wonder about your take on those two things.
Yeah, so regarding the change, this is kind of my opinion. It's kind of twofold. The first one is probably what most people say, which is people don't like change, cops don't like change, no one really does. And I think as you progress in your law enforcement career and you start putting that shiny stuff on your collar, you become more concerned with liability, budget, all the big picture stuff. And you kind of lose sight of where you came from and what's needed. And when that happens, you also lose perspective. When you're sitting in the office and you're doing the big picture stuff, which is important, the instant that happens, you become a has-been. And you're not working the job the way that it is now. So you'll have administrators, for example, that have spent the past 15 years with the shiny stuff on and never wore a body camera on the street. And they're pushing down things to officers expecting certain things, but without understanding the environment that they're working in now because they don't have that experience as much. So I think a lot of the issues is loss of perspective in administration. I think it's a lot of people don't want to be told that the way they've been doing things is antiquated. And a lot of the times, the root cause of that is, at least in the state that I'm in, if you become a police instructor, right? Say you want to be a DT instructor, right? You go through a methods of instruction course, you get a certificate that says, okay, you know how to teach under the eyes of the state post-certified teaching class. You then go to a defensive tactics course, pick your one. There's a billion good ones out there. You go to your course, you go to Officer Survival Series, you become an instructor, you train, you take your packet, your syllabus, and your methods of instructing certificate, you send it into post, and they'll come back to you and say, you're certified to teach defensive tactics. And that syllabus that they have on file never needs to get updated, and the instructor never needs to recertify in the way that we think. When you and I talk recertify, we think, hey, you got to go test your skills, or if you're a firearms guy, you got to go run a course of fire that's pretty hard so that you can show that you're proficient. But in the eyes of the state, recertification means just tell us how many hours you taught that class. It has nothing to do with performance. It has nothing to do with analytics. It has nothing to do with what we expect as outcome-based people. Like, I don't really care how you got to the solution, but you need to be able to perform on demand. And they don't look at it like that.
Okay.
So that's kind of a multifaceted answer, but
no, it was a very good one, and I think you're hitting all the key points. And I think there's a lot of people probably listening to this right now that are nodding their head, listening to this in their car, wherever they're listening to it, going that understand exactly where you're at, and they're very with what you just said. Sorry, and they're very frustrated by it. So the second part of the question is then, what is the tipping point now for you guys? So, and there's a couple keywords that came up in what you said there, and things were about being performance-based and being connected to what is actually going on in the street, that is not losing perspective. So what has changed? Is it the perspective is now changed? There's some metric out there that's being measured, and that has changed. And so now we're trying to better that metric, and we're recognizing that the training that you're doing is doing that. What can you tell me?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I'll speak to the program that I'm involved with, and there's a lot of good ones. But the Officer Survival Series, at least for me, my opinion, the reason it kind of took off was out of necessity. So I'll paint the picture for you. The state academy had an instructor in the legacy magic kung fu system, right? And that person retired. So they had no longer anybody up here full time that would be able to teach that class. So they reached out to a bunch of agencies and were like, hey, you guys have anybody that can come up here? And the state police said, yeah, we got a guy, but we're not teaching the legacy stuff. We're teaching the Officer Survival Series stuff or any modernized combatives program, or we're not helping you at all. So they had no choice. They said, all right, well, you're in. So for a while, the state police was teaching municipal and state cops the newer combatives program put out by OSS is what we call it for short. And they ran that for a while until they hired my buddy, who is also under my coach, Rob, and he got the full-time position to spearhead the DT program. So then once that happened, the state went back to doing their thing, and then he continued with the municipal departments. And fast forward to me, I came here because I saw an opening for the firearms part. And my goal was the firearms and DT component needs to be congruent, and it needs to be circular, and it needs to feed off of each other. So having the background in DT and focusing on shooting, me and my partner can kind of really make a very comprehensive program. And so that's why I came up here. And then once that happened, now that, because it's the state police academy, it starts to reverberate through all the other departments because they look to this place for guidance. So they're like, hey, what are you guys doing? It's like, oh, we're doing this. Like, oh, I guess we got to do that. And if the departments don't, they're going to get left behind. And what I'm seeing is a lot of the chiefs have these little mini competitions with each other, and they don't want to be the department that's like, oh, you guys are doing that? That's like from like the 90s. What are you doing? They want a good reputation, so they're incentivized through their peers to try and stay with the times. That's not necessarily the right reason, but it's working out for us in that regard.
I find that interesting because it's the same problem on the other end of things when things don't change. Like you're copying what everybody else is doing. Well, let's not rock the boat. Let's see what everybody else is doing and maybe what they're being successful at, but what they're also getting away with. You know, how little do I have to put into this to make sure that I stay kind of at whatever the this is a good word, I think, for this, is like whatever the standard is, right? And you just don't want to be below the standard. As long as you're meeting the standard, you're okay. You fly under the radar, right? You don't have to have tough conversations. Nothing gets confrontational. You can just kind of ride that line and focus on, allows you to focus on whatever it is that you think is important that you need to be focusing on outside of these things. But at the same time, when people are performing or they are moving up, or they're feeling pressure to be better, and this is interesting because this is interagency pressure or intra-agency pressure, as you're getting it from, because there's the state and then the municipalities, that follow. It works the same way, is what I'm hearing you say in a sense. That's interesting. Yeah. I don't know if you can talk to that a little bit more, just about like, because you are, so to be clear, one of the things we didn't cover is right now you are at the academy and you are the lead firearms instructor for the academy?
Yeah, so I'll say this to give some perspective. So I started off as a cop. I worked in like a pretty affluent town for around 10 years, got bored, went to work in a city, really liked it. But this position opened up as a firearms instructor at the academy, which was a full-time position. So I said, I can't keep complaining about all this training and then see this opportunity and pass it up. So I resort back to the saying I hear Kyle DeFore say all the time. He's like, if not you, who? So I was like, well, here we go. Buckle up, take a pay cut, and come up here and do what I can. And if it doesn't work out, I'll figure something out. I'm not worried about it. So that's how I ended up here.
Got it. So therein lies a bit of a challenge. And you, again, key points are, you see a problem, it needs to be fixed. In order to fix the problem, you probably have to work harder, work longer hours, commit more of yourself, sacrifice some things, and take a pay cut in order to change it. And I don't think a lot of people are willing to do that. No, I know a lot of people aren't willing to do that. And I think there's a lot of folks out there that, they, particularly in your line of work, that have put in their 8 to 15 years, whatever. I use that number because that's the number it just comes up for me quite frequently when I'm asking people how long you've been on for. And they've got at that point, they've done a lot of the, the night shift work, the stuff that's really tough, and they don't want to go back to doing that. They're making a good living, or, a decent living. They've got a lifestyle and a schedule and whatnot that they've become accustomed to. And doing anything that might add friction to that doesn't look so awesome, particularly when you have to take a pay cut to do it, unless you are really passionate about fixing a problem. And I think the bigger problem that law enforcement has right now, particularly in the pipeline, is there's not a lot of people that want that job. They don't want to do what I just said, right? They don't want to do that, and that is problematic. And obviously it trickles down. And then what do we have in the pipeline? Right? What do we have in the pipeline coming up? And it's going to take folks taking, again, to the Kyle DeFore quote, if you sit there and let it happen, you got to look at yourself in the mirror every day and say, what could I have done? Or stop complaining and do the thing. And by the way, if that's what you choose to do, I have no judgments there. What I have a problem with is the constant bitching and moaning without some action or at least effort to make it change. And I don't mean like just bitching and moaning and complaining and getting yourself in trouble and going to the wrong people and running your mouth or things about how bad things are. What I mean is like literally actively trying to find some solutions to it and putting yourself in a position where, yeah, you might have to work some longer hours to help do that. And that I think maybe at one point, I don't know, but I think maybe at one point in law enforcement, people were a lot more willing to do that than they are right now. And another thing that you mentioned with that is, going back to your military experience, is the longevity that somebody has in a position before they're able to or asked to or charged with doing something like that. What I mean by that is so you got a 4-year guy who hasn't been in very long, right? Who learned from a guy who maybe hadn't been in very long, and the guy before that had never really had that kind of experience. He was just teaching the quote unquote doctrine. And that is I think the broken model of policing right now is we are just the wheel continues to turn with inexperience and probably a lack of dedication at some level. And I don't know how you feel about that. I don't mean that to sound insulting, but that's just kind of what I see as a major problem. And then there's all the roadblocks that come along with funding things, right? Getting policies to change. And in your case, it sounds like what had happened was like a really good timing, right? Of somebody leaving that had been in there that was that person. It's like, nah, I'm comfortable here. I'm going to ride this out for as long as I can. We're going to do the same thing we've done, that we've always done, because it quote unquote works, or works for you, right? Works for that guy. He's gone. And then there's some pressure being put on with like, if you're not going to do it the right way, I'm not interested in doing it. And that's a strong position to be in to make change happen, where there's that pressure. I think that's the word you used. And so, I don't know if there's a lot of questions in that, just in my kind of taking this all in when I'm talking to other guys that do what you do, or other folks in the industry that do what you do. It is the same theme, but the people that are making the biggest impact are the same people that are doing exactly what you just said. Like, I am moving into something that is going to be way harder than I've probably ever done. And that is changing culture, right? And that culture has to change first before, the meat and potatoes really get handled. And so I'm wondering, just with the culture piece and what's happening, what you said is it's kind of spreading in a good way, like cancer. It's reaching out to other departments and whatnot. And I wonder how you're doing that. Like, it can't just be about the Chiefs, right? Because the Chiefs, and I'm not bad-mouthing Chiefs, it can't just be like the chief having a personal thing with another chief about not looking bad. There has to be more to it than that, man. And I wonder what that is.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think, and I didn't create the program, right? Rob, that's Rob's baby. He had done all the legwork with that. One of the things that I think he does really well is he does a couple of days, and it's usually like the level 1 is like I don't know, 8 or 9 day class, 2 days in a row spread out over a couple of weeks. So you get a couple of sleep cycles in there.
Okay,
it's kind of congruent with adult learning model, that sort of stuff.
Smart.
So he took that approach, which is appealing to departments because they don't have to send people for 2 weeks straight.
Mm-hmm.
The other aspect of it is there's, scenario-based training, and there was simunitions and stuff like that. But the scenarios, he uses role players from the gym. So they're not less likely to get injured. They're less likely to freak out. They're probably in shape, right? And they do exactly what you tell them to do. So they're not going to do the wild, off-the-cuff stuff that is unrealistic and not helpful for training that we commonly see when cops are role players, right? They want to hide 5 people in the trunk with pistols on a car stop and do like weird stuff like that. This does not happen during that course. It's very realistic for what people experience day to day. And then we do another day where it's a pressure testing day. And on the pressure testing day, we'll do like grappling-based drills. For people that train, it's a regular hard training session. But for people that have never trained before, they dread it and they don't know what to expect and they have no idea what it is. So it's an eye-opening event to them because a lot of them come into that with the preconceived notion of, oh, I'm a cop, I'm good. And, you know, they got the big gym muscles and all this sort of stuff. And the people that come in and train with these guys are, again, people from the gym. So you got a dude, we had a dude at the last one who was like 55 years old. And he's putting these guys to shame. And it's eye-opening for people to see that when they experience that. Mm-hmm. And that experience is, I've seen it be life-changing in some people. And then the third thing that I think is, then you'll have the people that are firearms guys, and they think, you hear the term like, oh, if they tried to fight me, I'd just shoot them.
Right.
And we doing a lot of work with Craig Douglas and stuff. Rob has done a ton with Craig. I've been training with Craig for a while too, and we'll do some live drills with sim guns and the Redbeard helmets, mm-hmm. and people will see like that is not as easy as you think it is, and it's sometimes makes the situation worse when you decide to pull out a tool at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. And we see that consistent with body camera. People are too close, they're pulling out tasers, people are grabbing the tasers, people are smacking pepper spray out of people's hands, all the stuff that we see all the time. And the fact that the students get to experience the failures in the mat room and then shown the correct way to do that, or usually it's vice versa. The class will be conducted and then they'll be put into a drill or scenario at the end. They get to see, like, prior to this, their imagination was the only thing that was guiding them in these drills, and now they're like, oh wow, this is eye-opening. I think those experiences where people are tested in front of their peers are worth more than anything that you can teach in a classroom or quantify through a test. And I think the combination of all of those things, they go back to their department, they show people, they send influential people from the PD down to the class, and then that kind of just rinse, lather, repeat until you start to get, the chiefs start to hear about it, and then everything kind of works together to progress the mission and spread awareness of it.
So I didn't hear you at any point talk about, like, we have to get through these boxes and tick these boxes, right? Like, student needs to learn this, then they need to learn that, then they need to learn this. And obviously there's a curriculum there to make sure that people are getting some practical stuff that they can take away, as well as the, as well as the experience is the word you use. And I think that's super important. Obviously, I've said this many times. I think there's no greater lesson in life than to be physically dominated by another human. And if you've not grappled, in sport or, in BJJ or whatever else, and you don't know what that feels like, it is a shock when it happens the first time, particularly when it happens to you from somebody that's smaller in stature, doesn't look the part, whatever the case is, and they're just handling purely with skill, speed, on all the other things you want to say, speed, violence of action, all those kind of things, right? They just, it's that thing that you will take away from you and you can't get it out of your head. Like, you just know you got handled. And you can't get that through, we're going to go through step 1, right? And then we're going to teach you step 2, we're going to step 3. And then by the time you get to step 10, you're going to have the things that you need in order to get there. So without running on this, really what I heard you talking about was the process. And the process of giving people tools and skills for problem solving. And part of the problem solving is knowing, is being exposed to the problem that you created for yourself for lots of reasons. Getting too close, you said, right? Not taking maybe action, close enough, pulling a tool out too early in a scenario, those kind of things. And those things have to happen in real time. It cannot be. This has been my experience, and from all the folks I've talked to and work with, that cannot be contrived. That has to happen in real time, and you have to be an observer of that to see it, and then you also have to be the user of it to experience it in order to get that. And until that happens, what are we teaching people? And I think the bigger question there is like, what are we doing in terms of setting people up for success or failure if we're not doing it that way? And I think to your point with body-worn cameras and the officers' I guess reactions to what you're giving them, now they get it. They needed that to happen in order for that to happen. Not on the street, in the mat room, right? In the gym. And so the process piece, and then I wonder in that process, like, how are you evaluating successes versus failures in those moments? And when somebody gets through, I think you said it's 9 days, nine total days. How are you sending people on, and you're going, you're good for now, right? And here's the things you're going to need to work on, and here's the resources we have for you to be able to do it. How does all that work out for you? Because again, if I'm an administrator somewhere, I need to see on paper that this is working. How do I know if it's working or not? Can you answer that?
Yeah. So a couple things. I'll speak to this first. So the first thing, the way that Rob does the program, it's a 9-day class, and the purpose of the class is his example that he always gives is it's a flashlight showing you different areas that you may not be aware of in this world of policing, in the combatives world. And it's everything. There's a lot of different areas. There's team arrest tactics. There's handgun retention. There's ground control, handcuffing people up against vertical barriers, vehicle extractions. It's a very broad topic. So no one's going to come to the course and become an expert in all those things. Right. So it's just like, he says it's like, the guy in the mall with the chicken on a stick. Hey, you want to try this? Here you go. Try the chicken. Right. And it's letting the students try out all of these things and have that experience. And for example, the last class was around 50 people, and he only gave out 4 instructor certificates. The only way you can be an instructor in it is you have to show that you're currently training in one of the, what we'll say, vetted grappling systems or fighting systems, and that's like wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu, something, because all the things that you're going to show, you need a base foundation in something, right? And the grappling arts, specifically wrestling, tend to give the most bang for your buck when it comes to police work. Jiu-jitsu is great, but jiu-jitsu people get too jiu-jitsu-y when it becomes combatives because it's a weapons-based environment, and we bring weapons to every scenario or situation, so they're always present. So we have to take that into consideration. So the spotlighting effect gives them the taste, and then the only way to become certified to teach through that class is you have to show that you've trained and continue to train, and that's usually by training with one of the instructors, or it's someone that, there's been professional MMA fighters coming through, and guys that are very well known throughout the area, they're going to be on the spot for the instructorship. So they don't get it just by showing up. So
there's a mentorship process that happens here.
But he's not wavering from that, and I think that's part of the good thing that this is producing, is quality instructors.
Look, so what I hear you saying is, God, it's so familiar, right? And it's so consistent with so many other folks out there. And you mentioned, look, there's a lot of good systems out there. And I guess the challenge is trying to get these systems adopted by, the agencies that are out there and put them in front of more people, right? And so more people can, we know it's going to take time, but put it in front of more people. I wonder, just in your interactions with others that are out there and some of the successes that you might see happening, how are other people overcoming these same challenges and implementing these programs and their things? I mean, can you give people advice or suggestions on where to kind of start, or even, bringing a plan to the table in order to make something like this happen for them?
Yeah, I think it's a arduous journey, and you have to. So you need someone in the department who's all in, and it doesn't need to be anybody in leadership. It needs to be somebody there who's committed to training, not like the training that we normally see in law enforcement. Like we call them paper tigers. Like they got the cert, but they can't do shit. That's not who we're looking for. You look for a guy or girl who's committed and they put the hours in the gym and they produce the results on the range. Like you find that person and you get them into the training classes. And then the second step is you need the buy-in from an influential person in leadership. And usually what happens, if for me in my first agency, I had a really good relationship with some administration. And what really sparked it was they trained. So they were putting in the hours and they wanted to see the officers also put in the work. So we even went as far at my first agency where we would have a program where you could train on the clock as many times a week as you want. And we would go over the curriculum of the course and of other stuff, depending on who showed up. We would train while you're at work. So that it removed the excuse for people to not train. And if you get those two things, that's the ball rolling. And now it's just time. And for a while, you're going to have a couple of people from the PD participate, and then it's going to grow. And then at some point, those leaders are going to start, like one agency, our sister agency, they started forcing all the people to go through this training. And I think that's kind of important. And it kind of speaks to like stuff that Matt Larson talks about, where he talks about, you know, the warrior culture is me as a person in the agency holding my peers accountable and expecting them to be able to perform and do the things that I need when you go through the door. And if they don't, they kind of get ostracized from their peers. And that's how it should be, because everybody should have those expectations of each other. So once you get the ball rolling and the administration starts saying, hey, you got to go to this class to at least get the chicken on the stick. We see a couple of people that come through, we call them hostages, like they don't want to be there. And not everyone's going to want to be there, but guess what? This job demands of you to do these things. So if you don't like it, my common phrase that I say is, go work at Walmart, because they're hiring and you don't need to do those things there, but you signed up. You didn't get drafted. No one forced you to do this job. You signed up for this job, and the job is to enforce the law. And every law that we have has the potential to be enforced with force. And if somebody doesn't want to comply with your shiny badge and all your tools, you're going to have to put hands on people. And if you don't know what to do when that happens, well, that's the job you signed up for. And that's the job that all of our peers expect us to be able to do. And that's what the public expects us to be able to do. And when we show up shorthanded, we look like fools. And so I think that's a very good aspect to it and an approach for people that are trying to get a program up and running to do that. And there's a lot of second and third order effects with that too. Rob's got a bunch of videos in body cameras from around the state, and they'll see things that are taught in class that day being used in the street that night. So it's very relatable. It's taught very conceptually. So people are able to apply those concepts and principles as opposed to a strict technique. We see that happening on body camera. Administrations see that happening on body camera, which reinforces the training. And then agencies also see, you know, their neighboring agencies have failures on body camera and saying like, hey, we have solutions to those problems. Like, people can't hide behind, you know, back in the day before the body cameras, it was like, we go to a call, we scuffle with a guy, it's a shit show, but he gets in handcuffs, we high five at the end and that's it. But there's no evidence of what happened, so we think we did good. Whereas now the body cameras are, you know, FOIable. Anybody can come and FOI those videos, and you could see firsthand, like, that wasn't good. Like, you got lucky a lot. And there's a big difference between what I say cops win versus the bad guys give up. And if they give up, that's usually a good, outcome. But you didn't win. You didn't win. You know, by him choosing to not fight you, you won. Not by your own accord.
This goes back to a little bit of what we were saying on your first deployment, and maybe just getting lucky. You know, and
some guys did, some guys didn't.
Yeah, that's the point, right? And what's the cost of a loss in that case? and I'm not just talking about your ego. Okay, so one of the things you mentioned is the tie-in with the firearms training side of things. So this is a little bit of a unique perspective that you can bring to the table because of the crossover that you're getting in the combative side of things. And again, I think things get siloed, right? We go to firearms training.
Yeah.
We go to DT training, right? We go to our legal training, our policy training, right? There's all of these different things, right? There's the less than lethal. And sometimes it's similar people delivering that information, and sometimes it's very different, and those guys aren't talking to one another. They're not talking together. So this is different. And I wonder what those differences are for you and how you've married them. And so if you can, maybe just overview, like, how does the crossover work and how does it look, out on the range, and what are the things you're bringing to the range that apply to the mat room or to the gym, and vice versa? Like, how is that? What does that language look like? What does that discourse look like? What does it sound like? What can you tell me?
Yeah, it's a good question. So to be clear, we did a lot of work with the DT program. That is a well-oiled machine at this point. The firearms implementation to that is still in the, I would say, beginning to middle phases of that. It hasn't been fully oiled up yet, but it's in the process. But what I'm seeing with that is, and I'll say this first, is I tell all the recruits in the academy, it's like, you need a set of hard skills as a cop. And Pranka always talks about, like, the hard skills being the operating system just running in the background. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a really good analogy. But the hard skills as a cop are multifaceted. And I describe it as a pyramid. And at the bottom, the base of the pyramid is fitness. Like, you need to be fit, because without that, none of the other things are good. So fitness is the bottom. And then right above that is talking, because you spend majority of your time talking to people. You got to be able to talk to an 80-year-old lady and a dude who's been living on the street and a gangbanger and a multi different types of people. And you got to be able to talk to them with respect. You got to be able to sell them, hey, if I could talk you into handcuffs, that's always an easy option, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to be convincing. And then above talking, we have fighting. Because if the talk doesn't go well, you got to be able to fight. You got to be able to control people. You got to be able to take people into custody, and you got to be able to protect yourself. And then above that is shooting, right? Shooting is a skill that you need to be proficient at. And then the very tip top of the pyramid is immediate medical aid. You got to be able to save your own life and a buddy's life, or an innocent person from trauma, like gunshots or stabbings or things that people see on the street often. And if you have those hard skills, what you'll see in people that have them is their level of confidence goes up. And they know which problem requires which solution. So they know, like, this is a talking problem, but I'm maintaining conversation outside the reactionary gap, because I know through fighting that if I get too close, this can be a problem. Or I'm not going to write on my notebook with my head down like this because I know I can get punched. All things like that. Or they know, hey, this guy's 20 yards away. That's a shooting problem. So I don't need to run up to him, because I have the basic hard skills that can guide my tactical decisions in the moment. And so, coming back to your question about the firearms, it's the firearms that we're trying to do on the range is a lot of the stuff that you've been seeing, focusing on, like, the competition aspect of shooting. That's my goal to try and bring here. And the reason why is, for years in law enforcement, you'd go on the range and it's like, all right, 6 rounds from the 25-yard line, you got 50 seconds on a giant target. Mm-hmm. There's no measure of skill there. There's no way to you get all 6 hits in, but it's all over the place in a very long amount of time. The data is so broad. There's no way to tell, like, what you did wrong, what mistakes you made, how to improve. And then we give that same cop a sim gun and we put them in a scenario, and they're shooting as fast as they can. They're missing everything, and it's not translating. So when we're seeing people that have a competition style of training in their shooting, we're seeing that directly translate to simunition scenarios and drills. And so it's like, well, okay, if we're seeing that happen, and we see body cameras of officer-involved shootings and what is happening, how the officers are reacting under stress. Force Science has done a ton of research on this. You see a lot of similarities in the training methodologies and modalities through competition style shooting. So the biggest part about that is we're taking the shooters and we're trying to build a proficient foundation that translates to simunitions and that translates to combatives, which gives them an understanding of what is a gun problem, what could be a gun problem, and how to solve a gun problem, right? And like Craig's class, which I'm sure you're familiar with, ShivWorks.
Yep.
He does a lot of the in-fight weapons access and entanglements with weapons and stuff like that. And, people pull out their pistol at too close of a range and it becomes a retention problem. Mm-hmm. And having the understanding of like, really know how the gun works, what your capabilities are with it are going to determine what is a gun problem, what isn't. And so that's what I'm trying to bring here. It's in the works and it's moving along, but it's another battle.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. You're dropping some pretty heavy names there, just in terms of your own influences and how they've influenced others. I find, it interesting. These are folks that are outside of law enforcement, right? They've had law enforcement. Some have had Matt's longtime military, but obviously Craig, longtime law enforcement, and they're bringing this stuff back based on those experiences, based on things that they've been through and seen and done, and to basically come over the top of everything you just said. And I wonder why that's so. I wonder why, whether it's administration or whoever, without labeling anybody, why the resistance to onboarding things that are so much more practical like that, and up to and including the competition style shooting. And I know there's ego here, and I know there's inadequacy here. And I guess what I'm always trying to put my finger on is that really all it is? Is that really all it is? Because if that's all it is, then that, to me, that's sort of an easy problem to fix. And I don't mean that I don't mean that disrespectfully. I'm just looking at it going, man, is that all we're dealing with? We're just dealing with somebody's feelings here, right? Because if that's all we're dealing with, then let's just be real about your feelings, right? And let's talk about those. But is it something bigger, man? I mean, are there evil forces out there that's like, no, we just don't want our officers to have these tools and skills because it will just make them way too dangerous or way too effective on the street, and that's just going to be bad for everybody. And again, it's sort of tongue-in-cheek, but I'm asking because it's so hard for me to fathom that this stuff isn't being like, yeah, that's what we need to be doing. Like, it's look at that body cam and look at that one and look at that one and look at the other 50 of them. And then look at this training scenario, right? Or look at this. You don't have to look at it for very long to go, that just seems like the right thing to do. So like, I'm asking an honest question. Like, what is it? Why the resistance to this? Why isn't every law enforcement agency out there, and I know you can't speak for everybody, and clearly yours is doing a much better job than probably a lot, but why aren't people just going, you know what? That is the right thing to do, and we need to put that in front of our people, and we need to figure out a way to do that. But why?
Oh, man, that's like the age-old question. I don't have an answer for certain. I could give you my thoughts. I think, number one, on an individual level, individual cop, and this might sound harsh, but, cops in our area make a lot of money. And a lot of money without even needing a college degree in most times. And I think most of them don't like doing hard things. Most of them don't like going into a room and being the new guy. They like the seniority. They like the seeing their name at the top of the list, getting first pick at stuff, being treated better than other people just because they've been at a place longer than others. And the culture doesn't support a meritocracy and performance. It supports time and grade, time and service, and that's kind of it. I don't think they like doing hard things. That's one aspect at an individual level. And that's a culture issue, right? And then moving up the ladder back to your thing about the administrations perpetuate that because they're not rewarding high performers. Usually the high performers are the ones getting written up. They're the ones that do something that the citizens are thankful for, but maybe was in a gray area of a policy and they get in trouble. They're the go-getters out there. So, and if you're a go-getter, you gamble enough, you're gonna, make a mistake every once in a while. And those guys tend to have that happen more often because they're doing more. And as opposed to the guy who sits in the parking lot and guards it all day to make sure nobody comes and does bad stuff in the parking lot, there's people that do that for 8 hours and they never get a bad mark on their record. And the admin might look at that and be like, oh, look, this guy's never been in trouble. So I think that kind of plays a part in it. And then you get up to the top, and the top is always worried about that magical word called liability. And the liability thing, I think, is just a thrown out word for I'm scared to make a decision. Because if I make a decision, it's on me if something happens. It's on me if, and status quo, like the saying, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. I think they kind of live like that. And they just throw that word out there to blanket everything. And I don't agree with it. I also think, going back to what we talked about in the beginning, which was their perception is different, their experience is different.
Got it.
It might not, all of those things combined, in my opinion, kind of just play part of the problem. And the ego is always there. I meet more egos in cops than I do in any gym, whether it's like a powerlifting gym, whether it's a boxing gym or an MMA gym or anything like that, or at the range. More egos with cops just because they think that badge is going to protect them from everything, and it's not true.
Yeah, man. I just really struggle with this because I see so many folks out there that are working so hard to try to make changes and provide good things for the good people out there and provide things to the folks that they don't know yet. They don't know. Yeah. And again, going back to the experiences that you're giving them on the mat or in the gym, and maybe on the firearms range now, it's your responsibility to do that. And so at what level are you holding yourself responsible for making sure that people have the things they need to do outside of your own personal agenda, which is to protect your own ass and or your own ego, I just don't really want to do that because it seems hard to do. It really challenges me. And you hit the nail on the head. I expect, law enforcement, it's in the word, to enforce the law. And I understand the realities of the world that we live in. And I think most good people do understand that. They don't always like the way it gets done, but they understand that there are necessary things that have to be done. And I think they're way more forgiving than that word liability, than that word liability. I guess the weight of that word. I agree with you 100%. I think it gets used a lot as, okay, well, what is the true liability here? And what would it be if we were handling things better from the get-go and giving people the tools that they need and deserve? And so the normal part of it would be, if an officer has to go hands-on with somebody, they do that very decisively, right? There's very little to no hesitation, and when they do that, they keep everybody safe in the process, which is they understand that they're bringing weapons to the fight. They're making sure that those things aren't getting taken away from them. Okay, there was a wrestling match. Okay, there's some level of control that needs to be administered here, and people might get bumped and bruised doing that. Some people listen to this and be like, yeah, but now you're just giving them license to, go out there and it's the wild, wild west. That is not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is what you said, when words don't work, like, what do you have? And again, for somebody to sit back and go, well, I am so disconnected from this process or from, not from the process, but from the work that gets done, that I don't think it's important. That's inexcusable to me. I just have a really tough time with that. I don't want to get on a diatribe about my personal feelings about this, but like, that is just bad all the way around. It's bad for you, right? As the administrator, like, it makes you look horrible, right? Number one, I'd be way more worried about looking like a coward than making the wrong decision. Look, people will forgive you for making the wrong decision. They will never wash the taste out of their mouth of you being a coward. it just is not going to happen. And once you lose that, or, once that's been affected, you are done. You're done. Nothing you do. And maybe that's a driver because it's happened for so long and they've done that so much that now they're just so resistant. Everything's a no. And unless you support me or agree with what I say, then I'm going to put my thumb on you. And again, going back to the officer that gets himself in trouble. Now we're looking for problems rather than rewarding the people that are actually solving the problems on the street in the right way. Again, getting off my soapbox. Coming back to the work that's being done and what you're seeing out there. I asked a question earlier and kind of about metrics but more I think what I'm asking is like a measure of success. So, and I think that's very tough, right? Because it's just like an officer involved shooting. What is the measure of success? Bad guy died or bad guy got shot, went to the hospital, lived, everything was fine. Officers are safe. No public was hurt. Like we had a win. Right, that's the metric, right? It's the lowest level of metric that you could possibly measure. So I wonder, like way more hands-on situations, use of force situations happen than officer-involved shootings. And so I wonder, like, is there a way to measure this or quantify it outside of you have to know what you're looking at to understand it? Like, how do we educate people on seeing something that's successful versus seeing something that isn't? Like, how do you do that? And I guess what I'm talking about, the perspective would be like the public, the officers, and the administration.
I'll give you an example. First, I'll tell you my opinion. My opinion is there's a lot of layers there. So what I'm going to say is not end all be all. It's just an example, in my opinion, a measure of like a successful outcome. And there's very varying levels of that. For example, you go to, I'll give you a real life example. You go to, there was a call where there was a very rich gentleman who decided to smoke marijuana for the first time. And in that marijuana was some PCP. And so he had never smoked marijuana before. And the first time he does, he gets PCP.
Surprise!
Here you go. So he does that, and he's a very nice house, very affluent area. His wife calls and says, "Hey, my husband's freaking out." So officers show up there, and they confront him, and he's clearly out of his mind. Clearly is on some sort of drug that he's not aware of or whatnot. And what happens is they end up fighting with this guy, and all of the officers that were on scene had trained, not like they weren't black belts, they weren't like grandmaster shooters, but they had been proficient enough in the foundational skills to where they could apply it as a team, not as three individuals, but as a team. They're able to take this guy down, they're able to handcuff him without injuring him. They were able to put the handcuffs on, talking to him through the whole process. "Hey, we're not fighting you. Just relax, man. It's okay." Using his name in conversation, and so they do that. None of the officers sustain any injuries. The suspect doesn't sustain any injuries, and it wasn't even a criminal offense, really. He just had a medical issue and was freaking out. So their intervention, professionally done through training that they've done over and over for years, ended up in a situation where the person got sent to the hospital, ended up being fine, and none of the officers got hurt. And the following day, mind you, this is an affluent area, so very like left-leaning style neighborhood. They did not like the police. So the wife calls up the next day and says, "Thank you. When you guys showed up, I instantly thought what I saw on the news that, you might have like hurt, would kill my husband or something outlandish that we hear. And that wasn't the case. And she thanked them. And I think that is a good measure of success in that type of scenario is if you don't get hurt and the suspect doesn't get hurt unnecessarily. There's a difference between, you need to hurt this guy to get the behavior change you're looking for to solve the problem versus I'm incompetent and I broke this guy's shoulder because I don't know what I'm doing. That I think is a failure. But when you see people come out of that situation like that, I'm like, man, that was a home run success. And the best part about that was we got it on body camera so that when we teach this, we can say, hey, this is what we teach and this is this happening. and the outcome was favorable. That's an example of that. That's going to be different for many different scenarios.
Sure.
And again, I don't want people to think that I'm saying like, people should never get hurt. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
that's impossible. That's impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible. And sometimes bad guys get broke because they make the choice. They want to do harm to somebody. Then they should expect to receive appropriate level of force in response to that. So
agreed.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Oh no, I hear you. Again, a great measure of success is when the public tells you good job and thank you for doing the thing that you did. God, man, I mean, I honestly think if people had opportunities to do that, better opportunities to do that without feeling like they were going to get slammed in their social groups, publicly or privately or whatever, they would do that. But I think they're afraid to do that because of what it says about, they may have to walk back on something that they said, or you're immediately labeled with something. But, I just look for ways to, I'm always looking, which is why I asked the question. I'm always looking for ways to like, okay, there's body cam footage everywhere. We typically see the most dramatic stuff out there. Most of it isn't very good. Occasionally somebody will come across something that is good and do a good job with it. There's a few folks out there in the social media world that do a great job at that. And I think it's appreciated by most, but most people are looking for clicks and likes. And that stuff is, that means you have to read into it. Like, this doesn't look really exciting. Yeah, that's the way it ought to be. Like, hopefully that's the way those situations end up working out. Like, it's a 3-on-1. It looked like it could get really bad, but the guy just got wound up in handcuffs. Who wants to see that? Right. But at the same time, and I may have been having this conversation with you, I don't know if I've had it with other people, like, people watch, like, one of the most watched shows in the whole world was Cops, right? Because people want to see how the sausage was made. And I think that also sends a message to those that may not like the law, right, and not want to follow the law and do bad things to bad people, that, this is what could show up on your doorstep or, in the parking lot or, right, in wherever, if you are not following the law. And law enforcement does not do a good job at telling that story. You guys are horrible at it. And it's not personal. It's just, you just are terrible at it. Somebody else is telling your story for you. And that story then gets told again and again and again in these inner circles or social circles, and then you wind up with a stigma that's attached to it, and then everything is bad. Again, and you can't. Again, it goes back to process, I think, and people needing to understand what that process is, and that's the process of the training, right? And I don't mean they need to know every single detail. That's not what I mean. Just you presented a pyramid. Right? That is really easy for somebody to understand because that makes perfect sense. It does. It makes good logical sense, right? And you got fitness, communication. I think then there was your grappling skill or your hands-on skill, or I can't remember exactly what it was, and then ultimately firearms, and then medical. Like, that is, why aren't we valuing those things? Why aren't those the foundational fundamentals that are being taught everywhere? And I would imagine, looking at that period, it makes sense to, like, that's where the time goes to. The larger part of that pyramid is fitness. That's the thing that you need to be doing the most often, right? And some of those other things get pulled into that, whether it's what you're training on the firearms range or what you're training on, with your grappling skills, your hands-on skills. And so I guess when I'm looking at like a hierarchy of training and how you're putting it together, that just makes good sense. It does, but people don't understand that. And again, here's me just getting frustrated again. It's not that hard to understand if you want to understand it. And they're never going to understand it unless the message gets sent out there, right? And people telling that message. And so as a guy who's on the inside of this and telling the message now, or giving the message now, and some of the things that I'm now seeing, and I have been seeing you put out, like on social media, through OSS, even on your own page, a couple of things. But I wonder what the answer to that is, and what advice that you would give, or what is the suggestion that you would give to agencies or departments, like you're doing internally. Hey, we're sharing body cam-borne footage. We're putting it out there. We're sharing it across agencies so that we can share the training. We're telling you what we're doing. We're showing you what we're doing. We're inviting you to experience this. Like, what's the answer there for places that are just so far in left field right now on all of this stuff? What can they... What do you tell them?
So the first thing I'd say is agencies are very quick to put out body camera videos of the things that went bad so they can get ahead of it. One thing that they could do and they should do is when something goes really well, is they need to put it out and they need to recognize the cops that did a good job. And if they did that, you would see an overwhelmingly more abundant videos of good things happening on a day-to-day basis. And those cops that do those things are going to be recognized. And then that in turn reinforces the training that they're doing. So that's the first thing, is recognize the people that are doing the good stuff and publicly do it. And by doing that, you'd be surprised about how many people would donate to your PBA for money to support training. The second part that I would say is typically when I explain that pyramid concept, the reason fitness as a bottom is because, just like you said, that is a lifelong thing. People want to be able to pick up their grandkids one day. That starts now, right? So that foundation never goes away regardless of what career path you take. All of the other skills in the pyramid can be interleaved. So they're not necessarily higher than the other or require more training than the others. They can all be done in a fashion that once you have the baseline skill, you can interleave all those in ongoing training. And that is shown to be better for retention and memory and all that sort of stuff. So when you do that, the way that I break that down is I tell people that if you can do those hard skills at a proficient level, those are the things that you don't have time to correct. So you don't have time, you can't go to a call and some guy takes off on you, got to chase him. You don't have time to be able oh man, I got to go do some warm-ups and some sprints to get my blood flowing before I chase this dude. No, what you showed up with is what you got, right? You can't look something up in a book to get that answer. Same thing with talking to someone. You can't have somebody else talk for you. You're there, you got to handle it. You can't have somebody fight for you. You can't have somebody shoot for you. Those things require on-demand performance in the moment. Everything else in police work, you could look up in a book. And if you want to talk about mitigating liability, look at all the big events that crushed this country that were on the news. All of them stemmed from failures in one of those aspects of the pyramid. And if you want to really worry about liability, you get your cops good at those things. It's easy to teach them. They need to know their case law. I'm not saying that's unimportant, but if they have the hard skills and they're proficient and they go in the classroom and they learn their case law and then they start applying it in their training, that's where you're going to start to see more confidence, more competence, and better performance of these people. And that's kind of the way I pitch it to, administrations or people that are higher up. I try to throw that liability word because they love that, even though for me it doesn't really mean a ton. There is liability in this job, but it gets thrown around so much. I think it's watered down. But that in the moment decision making is where you're going to find success with your people. And to clarify something I said earlier when I was talking about cops don't like doing hard things, I want to make sure I'm kind of clear on that, because there are an overwhelmingly amount of good people out there that are cops. And I think part of that issue is that they just don't know what they don't know. And part of that is like for me, when I was on that first time deployment, I didn't know what right looked like when we were doing CQB or mount trade. I didn't know. I just thought that what that guy showed me was real. And in the cops lens, it's the same thing. They only know what their in-service training has taught them or what the academy did. And they don't know what right from wrong is. They just say, oh, I've always done it this way. This is all that I know. And I don't agree with that statement, but they genuinely, I think they just don't know what they don't know.
Man, you said something that I had never really thought about, to go back to the pyramid and all the major incidents. I mean, I think that we can think of probably in the last 5 years that have happened that have created so many problems, so many policy changes, and how you can relate back to that pyramid and there was a failure at one or more of those levels. And oftentimes it's a very basic level. It's not like I think what I heard you say is you don't have to be an expert in all of them, and you can interleave them once you're there. There's things that you need to spend more time on maybe than others at your particular point or wherever you are in that period or whatever particular thing you're training. But that is so true, man. Like when I think back to some of the major cases and major issues, like, man, if that guy had been a little bit more fit, he'd been a little bit more proficient with his handgun, been a little bit more proficient with his taser, been a little bit more proficient like with his communication skills, like that just didn't need to escalate like that. And why did he do that? Is it just because he's an asshole? No, I don't think that. I honestly, I don't think that. I think, yeah, there's some assholes out there. I'll be, let's be real about it. But at the same time, is it probably came from a lack of confidence and a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge. They didn't know what 100%. They didn't know, and they hadn't practiced. They hadn't been told what they were doing needed to be better. They hadn't been shown a better way to do it. And it's whatever, maybe it's institutionalized, that this is just what we've done, and here we are, right? We're burning cities, right? We're burning cars down. We're people are going to jail. People are losing their jobs, right? Policies are changing that are making it tougher for law enforcement to protect people on the street, man. That's actually really powerful. I hadn't considered it like that when you're breaking it down to that. I'm going to steal that from you, man.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to steal that from you. That should be plastered everywhere. Like, when these things fail, this is what happens, right?
Yeah.
Hard stop, man. Let's transition here a little bit.
Okay.
By the way, I think you're doing a fantastic job at making this stuff very, very relatable. And I think it's hard, especially when you're talking about to people on the inside that have had so much experience, and they're trying to package it in a way for people to understand it. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I knew you could do that for me and for others. So thanks for doing that. Just want to pop in here and compliment you there. So let's transition a little bit, because in all this training, all the things you mentioned, the jiu-jitsu, right? The boxing, the grappling now, and all the things that you're doing, this is what you do. You're a cop, but at the same time, it's a part of your lifestyle and all the things. And you've got this cool knife and tool company, that you put together. And this is one of the ways I found out about you. So interesting. Well, here's a story. Maybe it's not interesting to people, but I think it is for me. So I originally found out about you through the tools, right? I want to talk about those. A couple friends of mine, particularly a buddy of mine, Joe Dawson, lives up in the Pacific Northwest, had reposted some of your stuff. And so I'm like, whoa, that's freaking cool. And it was Blade. And I was like, man, that is really neat. Like, and then I started following, I was kind of watching kind of what you're doing. I was like, this guy is literally, in your own words, like tinkering in his basement here and coming out with a really cool practical tool for those that know responsible people that know how to use them and train. I was like, this is cool. And then I found out that you were in law enforcement, but I didn't find out that till later, but I found out like, and this guy is in law enforcement, which is an interesting fact. And then, I'd kind of seen some of the stuff you put out. It's got a nice, I'll use the word edge to it. It's no pun intended. I was like, I like this guy's style. Then I had a person on the show that was very controversial, still controversial at this time, and who had asked to be on the show. And there was a lot of talk about some of the things he was putting out from a training perspective. And I had questions about that. And so I reached out to other people. I'm like, what, I hear what's going on here. Why are you guys so angry with this dude? Right. And there were some real clear things and there were some unclear things that I didn't understand. And I had questions like, why, with as much as this guy's kind of heat this guy's taking, like, why is he still doing this, or why is he doubling down? And the guy came on the show, we had a conversation. And in that conversation, I asked the questions that I had that weren't going to get answered in the comments section or in DMs or anything else. So let the guy talk. I put that episode out and it got a lot of attention. And some of that attention wasn't really positive. And I knew that was going to be the case when I put it out there. And, but at the same time, I was like, give this dude an opportunity to talk, right? Because this other social media communication is not really working. Let's go long form on this. And you popped into the comments section and asked the same question some of the other guys were asking, which, by the way, I've since developed pretty good relationships with. But like, why would somebody give this guy a platform? And I explained to everybody, and that was the general question. Like, this dude, like, this is not good information. We shouldn't be putting it out there. And I said, look, man, I just had questions. Wanted to give the guy an opportunity to speak, and here's what I got from you. And it was basically, in a nutshell, I'm paraphrasing here. It's like, look, man, I don't want to bring any negativity to your page. This guy's a problem, and here's the reasons why. But I appreciate what you're doing, and I will listen to that podcast to try to get your perspective on it. And you did, and then I got some very detailed feedback back from you. That means the world to me, because somebody takes the time to listen to the show and to get why I did what I did, right? Why I had this particular person on, as unpopular as he was, and maybe continues to be with a lot of people. It's not everybody, so to be fair, and that's really where our communication started, and it started with just trying to understand the other person, and you took the time to try to understand me, and I really appreciate that. And then that's turned into a lot of other conversations that we've had about other stuff along the way. I don't think we really exchange memes too much like a lot of dudes do. we exchange, sort of some sentiments and things, but it's been very helpful for me. So then in comes the tools part. Let's go back to the tools. So in the tools part, like I saw you starting to produce some stuff, and again, there's the law enforcement side, right? And then there's the Bill Braski side, right? And this kind of this other aspect of you. So I wanted to talk to you about the knife and tool company and just kind of where that came from, because a lot of people start these things for different reasons. I want to know how and why it started for you.
So I had started making stuff back when I was a kid, and it never really went anywhere. I was always interested in it. And then what really sparked it for me was when I was overseas the second time, we had internet, and I was scouring the internet in boredom one day, and I found a cool tool, we'll say, and I guy was making them, and I bought one from him, and I was like, man, when I get home, this is going to be sweet. Well, I get home, and it wasn't there. So long story short, I ended up getting like kind of beat for my money. So I was like, whatever. I got spiteful, and I was like, you know what, I can make that. So I went out and I started making it, and then my buddies were like, hey, can you make me one? Can you make me one? And then it just kind of compounded. And it actually, it's funny how things happen for a reason, because taking this job, like teaching now, was a huge pay cut. Was like almost like 50 G's pay cut. And
wow, really?
Yeah.
So this goes back to what I was saying. Like, you're making it really difficult to get the good people into the jobs. You're going to pay them less to do some of the most important things. Yeah. Not to take away from anybody else, but Jesus.
But because of that, this business has grown. It was all word of mouth. It was all advertised on Instagram. I never really did any marketing or anything like that. And I really just wanted to make. I make kind of like retirement gifts, and the paperweights are kind of more like sentimental things people want, personalized, like the set I made for you. Yeah. That sort of stuff. But the blades is what I focused on for like a tool to be used. And I wanted to make an affordable, custom, purpose-built tool for people, especially on the job. And so I started to do that, and that's what guided me to do that. And then it started supplementing some of the income that I was lost from the day job. It's a grind because, I work evenings. So I get home at like 11 and I'm working in the shop until like 2 a.m. And then you get up and you do the whole thing and trying to be a family man at the same time. It's a grind, but nothing good comes easy. So I just been making what I feel is solutions to niche problems for people to use in day-to-day life.
I love it, man. There's an art piece to this too. There's a uniqueness to everything you put out, and no one is exactly the same, which I really love. So like some of the things I take away from it are, and it's no surprise given what you do, and I think all the things that people have heard about you today, like there's a craftsmanship to this, right? And there's a kind of an exploration and experimentation process in your process, and I've seen that in your products, and all the different things you're trying and doing, you're not afraid to do. And my experience in getting product from you was very good. So I did not know that story about getting basically screwed and then actually making the thing that you wanted in the first place, and likely making it much better. And now here's where it's gone. I love that story. But yeah, there's an art piece to this. There's a craftsmanship piece to this. It's hands, right? You're working with your hands. It's human made. There's a person behind there that's grinding away, literally, doing their thing. Which for me, in terms of purchasing products or purchasing tools or whatever, I had a unique experience as a kid. My dad very in love with his tools, always wrenching on stuff, working in the wood shop, doing things like that. And there was a story behind every tool, right? There was a story behind every, and then the things that would show up in terms of what he would produce with those tools that were around our house, in our garage, and wherever they were. That story was attached to it. And I think that's really important. I think people want that, to some extent. There's a connection to it. And, again, for me and my own product and what I have from you, it sits on my nightstand, man. So I see it every day. It's right there. It could be useful if needed, right? But at the same time, it's right there. And I look at it and I go, I know where it came from. I know who made it, right? I know how it got made because we actually got into some detail on it. And you're like, hey, I can do some different things with it if you're not satisfied. I'm like, no, dude, that thing's fucking rad. Send that to me. I want it now. Get it in the mail. And you did. My point being, I think people out there want to know this, right? I think they want to know about, the people behind their products and who's actually doing it and where it comes from. So that's the first time I heard that story, man. That's it's cool. It makes the stuff that I have from you that much more special and makes me want to have more of it. I'm curious, just in the business and like who's buying this stuff from you, man? Like who are your customers? Is it you have tons of repeat people that are trying to own everything that you've ever made, or is it you're constantly bringing on new people? How's that work?
Yeah, I'm terrible at marketing, and I'm terrible at like putting myself out there like that. So, I mean, I do have a couple of people that buy everything that I make, and they're usually friends that I've had for life. I get a lot of people like in my circle, like the cop community, the martial arts community, the shooting community. A lot of people that I met at the Combative Summit, the first one. A lot of those people, and I think it's people that are like-minded, and those are the people that I'm trying to make things for, because that's the end user, in my opinion. And if I make something and I send it to someone I highly respect in the area, and they give me feedback and say, hey, that's awesome. Like that's reinforcing what I'm doing. Or they tell me like, hey, make some changes here, do some this is what I need. I'm like, hey, I gotcha. And then I can do that. So that, I mean, it's kind of not the best answer, but it's really just community based. Not local to me, but the collective throughout the nation, I guess.
I think it's a fucking great answer. It doesn't need to be the best answer. I think it's a great answer because, I think this stuff brings people together too. Whether it's, people are into, their firearms, they're into watches, they're into cars, they're into, different types of collector items. Not, you're making a very practical tool that could be useful and carried on you every single day to be used for whatever. Again, going back to the knife thing, like it's whether it's opening your mail or your Amazon boxes or whatever else you need to use it for. Like I said, I have a strong connection to people that have that passion, that put that in, and then they want to make sure that their customer and their circle is happy with what they're getting versus, punching out a product, sending it out, and then that's the end of it. And again, I think the uniqueness here is that they're all handcrafted. They're individually made, and you know where they're coming from. You know the dude that you're getting it from. I don't know. I have a passion for that too, and making sure like if you're gonna have a touch point with somebody, let's make sure it's a meaningful one. And so all of my touch points with you have been super meaningful, and particularly on that side of things. I'm curious though, just on the company side of things, like you're a busy dude. So going back to like you don't really put yourself out there, and you're a terrible marketer. Well, those are all skill sets in and of themselves, man. Yeah. But like you're a busy dude. Like where's this thing going? Like, is it just something like you're just happy to do, a few releases of half a dozen of, this or half a dozen of that at a time, and that's where it's going? Or what are you looking, what's the future look like for Wild Bill Braski?
That's a good question. So the custom knuckles I'll always do because I think it's a cool gift. I think it's a very like masculine gift to give somebody, very like powerful gift. So I'll always do those customs. My kind of goal with the knives was I came up with a couple of designs, like the Impaler. I designed that with my buddy specifically to be able to have on your kit or on your belt as a secondary option for a rifle malfunction. And we were finding like in the shoot house, if you're at that reactionary gap distance and you have a rifle malfunction, the split time to blade on target was significantly faster than pistol, which is your traditional solution to that. And not saying it's to replace the pistol, but just saying it's an option that if you train it, the split time for that is significantly faster. So having that experience was like, all right, that's where I want to design this, and that's why that's designed the way that it is. The other model that's pretty popular is the Insidia, and I designed that to just be a low profile, like everyday kind of carry thing that people can use that will be durable. So my goal was to make those two designs, and once I dialed in the design through end user feedback, was to get them into production market so that it could be more affordable for people to purchase. And then once that happens for me, I can get blades into people's hands that need them and use them daily. I don't want them sitting in a safe. I want people to use them. If they break, we'll replace it. And that by doing that model, that frees up my time to devote more to training and specifically, kind of working on more custom stuff in my time that some people request. Like I get a lot of requests for like groomsmen gifts for wedding parties and all this sort of stuff. So it gives me time to do that. The biggest thing that I'm kind of proud of that's coming up is this sheath design that we have. And if you don't mind, I could show it to you just to kind of help to explain it.
Hell yeah, let's see it, man.
Yeah, so this is my everyday carry. So this is a Insidia in our new sheath called the Moaz sheath. So my company is Bill Braski Knife and Tool.
Hold it up a little closer to the camera, man, because my screen is all cut down while we're recording this. Okay.
I got you. So it's right here.
Yeah.
And so the second company I'm involved with is Pragmatic. And Pragmatic is we make the sheaths for this. So I wanted, I carried an Amtac blade for years since they came out. And I love that knife, and Bill's a great dude. And then I was like always having resheathing problems, cutting up my pants and stuff like that. And that tended to go away over time with training and reps. But I was like, you know what? I want to fix the sheath in the knife world. And I also want to make it so that someone can buy a sheath that fits any knife. So what this is it's a sheath that it's a modular sheath. So I'll take it apart for you. So it's in two pieces.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Right? So you can use, the back side here is adjustable. So I can take this piece out, trying to do this while I stay on camera.
So I think what I just saw you do is you took out like a spacer.
That's the cover. I'll show you that in a second. So this is the sheath disassembled. So we use proprietary discrete carry concepts hardware, and it's channelized inside. And you can put a pocket clip on it, you want a belt clip, you put whatever clip you want on it, right? And then you put this cover back on the inside so your blade doesn't get scratched up. Yeah, so this is just to cover the hardware so you don't get any scratching, right? The lighting in here is kind of rough. And then this cover right here, the unique thing about it is it's a magnet, right? So the retention in the sheath is magnetic. And what you get with that is a really consistent draw. Like in Kydex, you get that resistance point for retention, and then once you break that, there's zero. So this is like a consistent 3-pound pull all the way out. So when you draw the blade, you just get a very consistent draw and a silent draw. And so with that, this sheath will fit generally any knife that fits inside this dimension. So you don't need to buy a Kydex specific sheath for $100 that only fits one knife. Like you can buy this sheath for a little bit less than that and have it fit any knife that you decide to carry. Because if I don't produce a knife that you like to carry, then you could take this and make it any carry option that you want, and you don't have to purchase another one. So that's what I'm really proud of with bringing that, because when I was working the street, I would have an Amtac in my pocket, and over time the Kydex retention kind of wears. And I was like, man, a couple times I get out of the car, the knife was out of my pocket. I was like, oh shit. So I came up with this, and I started carrying this on the road, so that way it's in there 100%. And then when I need it, it's there. And then resheathing with this lip, the second the blade touches the magnet, you're good, and you drive it in. And so
pulls it in.
This is the design that I'm proud of, and this is the smallest model. to be the most concealable, and then you have a little bit larger, and then a big model. And my business partner in that, he's a carpenter, so he uses the big model for like chisels and stuff like that while he's at work. So it's kind of multifaceted in there. And I actually talked to, it's funny, you're wearing his hat, the Good Dude Concepts.
Yeah,
and I was like, dude, I'm gonna make you a sheath for that thing, and be similar concept I'm working on. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm going. Yeah, I'm going with that route.
That's exciting stuff, man. Like I love this word gets tossed around a lot, but it's the word's innovation. But it's going back to Chris and Good Dude and what he's doing with the breacher bar. It's solving problems that are real problems that exist for people out there that actually use the tools, right? That they're not. You mentioned putting them in a safe or just collector's items. And look, dude, I've collected some stuff over my days. There's something to be said for that. But if you're using it constantly, then these things inherently come up, and you find where things can be better. And it's cool to see people out there trying to solve those problems. Going back to again referencing Good Dude and what he's doing, I think that's an awesome collaboration. I want to be part of that somehow. Like if I can get involved in that, like anything I can do to help you guys would be an honor to do. But seeing kind of where your head is, and I actually watched you light up a little bit. I mean, this might sound a little corny, but like the stuff we've been talking about, like I didn't see you get as excited about any of it as much as I saw you got excited about, the sheath and kind of talking about what you're doing, which is cool. And I think that's another part of it. In terms of where people are getting their products from, like who is this person, what's going on behind this product, and what excites them about it. And I get that not everybody's going to be as excited about it as you, but fuck, man, it fires me up when I see people fired up about solving problems, providing people good stuff, and taking their feedback and wanting to make it better all the time. And I gotta imagine it's kind of therapeutic at some level. Just in terms of the time that you do spend there and balancing all the things in life, that are going on, where you get to go grind on some new products and make somebody happy on the other end, get that feedback from them on the other end that they're stoked. Or again, you mentioned like, groomsmen dude, I've been a groomsman a few times. I've never got anything that fucking cool.
Yeah, I know. Right?
I'd never got any. That's a cool groomsman gift. So, great ideas. I am, just in kind of watching your process and what's been happening over the last couple of years with your products and stuff. I'm starting to see more of it. It's coming out more frequently. Must mean you got a little bit more time to do it, which is awesome. And I encourage people to go check it out. Look, Bill, this just sitting down and having a conversation with you, kind of face to face, that being digital is never the most awesome way. I wish we could do this in person, but you're on the right coast and I'm on the left coast, and it's the logistics are a little rough. You mentioned Combatives Summit and going to the first one. Any chance you're going to be at this one? This will be the third annual out in October, because I will be there. You going?
I'm really trying to go. I'm probably going to go. Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to get work to send me. It's a battle, so I might just go anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, man. No, I get it. I've talked to a lot of instructors, and right now it's interesting, folks trying to fill their classes and fill summits and fill courses or whatever else. And it's coming down like people really want to go, and they're putting it on calendars, but they can't pull the trigger on it because there's a lot of things going on. But I know that summit is going to be is bigger and better this year than it ever has been. And the point of saying that is when guys like you are trying to go, that says something, right? And that's the room I want to fucking be in. Like wherever Bill's going to be, wherever, John, Valentine's going to be, wherever Craig Douglas is going to be, and wherever Matt Larson is going to be, when these guys all show up to the same place, that's probably a pretty good indication that you want to be there. So I hope that works out for you and for me selfishly, if I get to meet you there. But it's on my calendar, and unless there's an active God that keeps me from going, I will definitely be there, and I hope I get to shake your hand in person there at some point. So work on that, dude. If you need me to make a phone call for you, to somebody up there, tell them what's up, just let me know. I'll do it. That Combative Summit, man, what an experience. Like John put on a phenomenal thing. I love John. He's such a good dude.
talk to him frequently. And that walking into that room was fucking humbling. Like there's no other way to describe it. Like you see people from Craig, Matt Pranka, like all these guys. And you know what the craziest thing was about that is I never met Matt Pranka before, and he was taking notes the whole time. And I see him sitting in the back, and he must have filled up a notebook. And I'm like, if a guy like that is taking notes at something like this, like it just put it into perspective. Like I'm like low on the totem pole of relevancy in that room, and I'm like surrounded, like on the shoulders of giants is the phrase that I like to think of. Like I've never been in a more humbling, honest environment where people are like the masterminds of this craft are coming to find the best and most current way to tackle these problems. Is really, I encourage anybody that can that's interested in that they should definitely go. It's an experience.
Like if you felt like you're the lowest level of relevance, then I was like the turd that got put out by the guy with the absolute lowest level there. Like when I walked in, talk about humbling, but here's the thing about that. All those dudes equally as humble. I mean, you drop some names there. Cliff Byerly's there, right? You got the Redbeard crew is there. Like, dude, I mean, I didn't know what to expect. Like, and that was my first interaction with 99% of those guys in there. Cole Miller, like you just walk in there and just going, what did I just walk into? And it feels like it would be extraordinarily intimidating, but it's not. It is hands down the most intellectual and I'll say this and I mean this, like in the most intellectual and caring group of savages I have ever been around in my life. That is it's kind of a weird experience. I took Cece with me too, and she's like, this is different. Like there's something totally different here. So, shout out to John Valentine and the crew there that's putting on the Combative Summit, man. It is an outstanding couple of days. I know they're doing more with it this year, and it's really shaping up. So obviously we're plugging the event. But I don't get paid by Combative Summit, like, any of that stuff. Like John's just a fucking insanely good dude who wants to help people, and he's been able to somehow wrangle in some of the greatest minds into one place for a few days. And so if you have people listening, for anybody that has any opportunity and they can get out there, it's in Mississippi again this year. It's going to be insanely good. It'll be warm, but it'll be insanely good. And it's not an ass beating contest or anything like that. It's nothing like that. It is purely exchange of genuine knowledge. And again, that gets tossed around a lot, but it's like it's such at a higher level. It's incredible. Anyways, I'm probably talking too much about it, but no. Yeah, if those guys, if I know you dropped a lot of names on here, and some of those guys are there. And again, the opportunity to get there in front of them for the ridiculously affordable rate that you could actually do that is pretty great. And the social part of it, just the meeting and hanging out with the people that attend, the attendees, it's just a different group. And if you're a dude that just needs to be around some dudes for a little bit, this is the group you want to be around. It's really fun. It's a good time.
And I want to say too, I'm not trying to drop names to be like, oh, look at the people that I've met or whatever. It's for the people listening. It's like, these are the people that are on the forefront of this training and these modalities. And those are the people that I choose to align my values and training with. And a good example, like you said about the social thing, is like, that's where I met Cliff, and he taught the vehicle extractions. And, a year later, I was using that on the street, and I sent him my body camera video. I'm like, hey, Cliff, can you take a look at this? He takes a look at it, and he's like, hey, you forgot about this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh, shit, like, you're right. So we went back, trained it, and then when we did it again, we get the body camera, send it to him, see, yo, what do you think about this? He's like, all right, it's looking better. And you get that feedback, and you get that relationship with these people that are like carving out this combatives culture. Yeah. And it's phenomenal. I went down there with Rob, with my coach, and it was I can't say enough good things about it. And the other thing that John did very well with was, there were some people there that were interested in combatives but didn't have a large background in it. And it didn't matter, your experience level, the way that they taught and the way that they are approachable. You could go in there with no knowledge, and you could walk out there with some understanding. And he did a very, very good job at that. So people, if they're interested, especially cops or anyone, and you want to go, and you're intimidated, do you think you need to be like a pro fighter? That's not the case.
Right.
They're very accommodating, and yeah.
It's such a good point, man. And what is the value in having those relationships to be able to walk away with and, again, send body cam footage to, a guy like Cliff and have him give you feedback, personal feedback on it? Like, dude, again, for free? Like, come on, man. Like, for the investment that you have to make, the lifetime value that you will get from that experience it's invaluable. There's just no way to put a number on that, and lifelong relationships as well. And again, like probably going back to like if you're intimidated, you think you got to be a pro or whatever. All of those guys will tell you like I know nothing. Like I know nothing. I am just on this journey and trying to figure it out. And that was one of the bigger takeaways from me was nobody there with all of those people in one place. Tom Kyer, for God's sakes, like all these people there. They're all learning from one another. Go back to Prank and taking notes. And just to circle this back without getting too far off track with the Combative Summit, it's just like I see that as you as a lifelong learner and how you're taking those notes to your people and sharing it with them for a big pay cut, right? And I think that speaks volumes about you, but it's very, very similar to how a lot of these other folks operate. And they're not out there to be bazillionaires, giving, teaching people classes or courses or whatever. They're truly, genuinely interested in just making people making sure that people have the right stuff, which is the same thing you're doing. So, dude, when you say like you level of relevance, like I get it. It's humble, but don't sell yourself short, dude. You're exactly the same kind of human.
The other thing that, that comes to mind with that too is, because we do a lot of the training, like I mentioned, the vehicle extractions in Cliff. But another big benefit to something like that is sometimes people get caught in their echo chamber. So like we at OSS, we teach our vehicle extraction stuff and we get body camera videos of things, going well and that we trained. It's always good to, and in my opinion, we keep ourselves honest and we share those things with other people in the space. And if it aligns with what they're doing and what they're seeing, then I'm like, okay, that passes the peer eval check, and that keeps us honest. And I think Ben from Redbeard had said that, before the first Combative Summit, none of those guys have ever been in the same room, but they had done training on their own for years, and they all came to similar conclusions on things. And now they just finally got in the same room, and they're like, hey, we've all been individually working on these things for years. We've come to the same conclusion. This is us, peer evaluating each other and saying like, okay, this checks out. And I thought that was really interesting to hear. And so I try to do that too and share that with people like Cliff and Craig and even bouncing off my coach Rob. And we try to stay honest with it and not try to live in an echo chamber where I think the only thing that I know is me is what I do. And that could be detrimental, I think, and stop progression, stop growth. So it's such a good thing to get involved in.
Yeah, I appreciate that sentiment. Yes, in fact, and here's a plug for the show. This is the shameless plug. Well, I did a whole series with all those guys. There was a couple guys that didn't get in. I didn't get one in with Cliff. That is definitely on the agenda this year. I did do. We did a show with Ben. We had Cole. We had Tom. We had Matt. We both Matts, Larson and Pranka. We covered a lot of ground with a lot of folks, and every one of those conversations blew my mind just with, again, the level of agreement without actually having trained together or worked together and sharing curriculums and whatever, just the level of agreement on the foundational principles and then how to solve problems. And it's not about, it's not outcome-based, it's process-based. And that was a very interesting takeaway that they basically came to the same through their own process, came to the same conclusions about how to solve multiple problems or different problem sets. And again, it just gets I don't know what the right word here is, but it gets like reconfirmed every time they come together. And the fact that they did it once and they thought it was so good, those guys thought it was so good, they came back together in that world. They came back together a second time, and were encouraged to be there and are coming back again. That speaks volumes. So like what you're saying about in terms of staying relevant, staying in check, keeping your finger on the pulse and whatnot. There's not a lot of places you could probably do that. And as busy as you are, going to the same gym every day, working with people, doing your job or going to your same BJJ school or whatever people do out there, it's as good as or better than competition in terms of figuring yourself out. Because it will teach you a ton of things. And I'm speaking probably way out of line. I am just telling you my experience, but also the experiences I was watching and hearing other people have while I was there. So, in just in the bigger scheme of things, in terms of your what you're doing at your agency with OSS and whatnot, that is exactly what we're talking about. Because it's spreading into other things, and the good people are coming together, and good knows good, right? Those good instructors know other good instructors, and it spreads, and it picks up momentum. And man, I just wish you all the best of luck with what you're doing there. Obviously for the people that need it the most, as well as yourself, and continue on your journey with getting better every day and helping other people do the same. You seem like a guy to me that's just trying to leave the world a better place than he found it, and doesn't need to be propped up for that. Just wants to know that what he's doing is the right thing. I don't think that's a bad thing, and surrounding yourself with people and spending time with me to tell your story, to continue to do that, man. I commend you for that, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, maybe one day we'll get a chance to do this again. I would love to maybe. I got to get into some more of your products. I want to know what's going on there and how I might be able to help in the future. That could be a really fun project for me. And we'll definitely stay in touch. If I don't see you in October, one of these days, you'll have to come out here to the West Coast, hang out, work out a couple days. Maybe we'll introduce you to some of the cats around here that do some of the things that you do. Or I have not been to your neck of the woods, and I am very interested in seeing and experiencing kind of what's going on. There's a lot of talent out there. You guys got a lot of good folks up where you're at. And
you're welcome up here anytime, buddy.
Yeah, brother. I totally appreciate that. Thank you so much. So anyway, man, again, risking overdoing it here. I just want to thank you for all your energy and your time and the things that you're doing out there. I think there's a lot of people out there can take a lot of value away from, the things that you brought to the table today. And so this is the point where we get to kind of plug you a little bit. And if people want to reach out, maybe talk shop, and get some feedback, or provide some feedback, or get into some of your products or your tools, how do they find out about you? Where do they go, dude?
Yeah, on Instagram it's Wild Bill Braski, and then if you need to shoot me an email, it's on the website as well. WBBKT.com is the website. It has all my contact info and stuff up there. If you need something, shoot me an email if you need anything training related or product related. I could help you as much as I can. Those are the two biggest places: the website and Instagram.
Well, there you go. Hit him on Instagram. This guy's pretty active there. He's always doing something. There's always something interesting coming out. Again, man, best of luck to you. This has been a lot of fun for me. I appreciate you. And man, I look forward to talking to you again sooner than later.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here.